Hello, my name is Kelsey and welcome back to my channel. Before we get started, I just wanted to say thank you to each and every one of you. This last week has been amazing and it's so exciting to see the traffic and support that my channel's been getting. For those of you who are new subscribers, I hope you stick around and I'm so glad to have you. I can't wait to see where this channel is going. So without further ado, this week's episode is about the different ways that you can upcycle an old book. I wanted to explore some of the cute crafts that I could make with the pages. So let's get started. For those of you who have been with my channel a while, you know that I often do projects that are a direct result of my puppies chewing something up. In this case, it was a book, and that hurt my heart a little bit because I love books and I love to read. But I held on to it because I thought that there might be something I could do with the pages. So if you have a messed up book that you were going to throw out, hold on to it instead and upcycle it into one of these cute crafts. First up, we have these adorable envelopes. I love how these look. I'm going to show you how to make these without any special tools, just whatever you already have in your craft drawer. You won't even have to download and print a template. I'm going to show you how to make your own. So first up, you need to sacrifice one of your book pages in order to make your template. Now some of the corners on my book are a little chewed up, so I'm going to cut off the top so I have a nice straight line. Fold the page diagonally to make a square and cut off the excess at the bottom. Once you have your square, fold the paper in half horizontally and then in half vertically. Now you need a ruler and a pencil. I'm using a pen so that the marks I make will be more visible to you. Line up your ruler with one of the halfway folds and make a mark along the edge at 1 centimeter and another at 2 centimeters. Do this for all 4 of the halfway fold lines. Now you do have to be careful here because it does matter which side of the fold you make your marks on. The best way to explain this is for me to show you what the end result should be, and that will help you figure out which side of the fold to mark. You can see I even have an extra set of marks because I messed up and marked the wrong side. So here's the finished template. You can see that there are 2 larger triangles at the top and bottom and 2 smaller triangles on the left and right. I'm going to explain how to make the notches in a moment, but this is the shape that you're going for. So once you've got all 4 sets of marks, turn the square so that it's a diamond, and draw a line between your marks at 2 centimeters, one on the top, one on the bottom, like this. Next, we're going to make those notches that I mentioned. Use your ruler as an improvised square tool to get a nice 90-degree angle. Line up the bottom of the ruler along the line, then move it until the perpendicular edge lines up with the mark you made at 1 centimeter. Trace the outline. Do this for all 4 sets of marks. Now you can cut out those neat little right angle triangles and those become the notches. And that is your finished template. You can use these instructions for any size book page that you have, although if it's a larger page you may want to increase the spacing and distance of your marks. If you've done it right, the corners of the notches should all line up, like so. Now it's time for the fun part, making and folding the envelopes. Take your template, line it up with one of your book pages, and trace around the outside, then cut it out. Turn your page until one of the larger triangles is at the top of your diamond. This is going to be the top flap of your envelope. Line up your ruler with the bottom of the notches and use your scissors to lightly score the paper like so. This will ensure that when you fold the paper at the crease, you will end up with a neat, crisp, and straight line. Do the same thing for the bottom triangle and for the triangles on the left and the right. Fold the bottom triangle up along the line you scored. Fold the triangles on the left and the right in toward the center. I'm sure you can see the envelope taking shape at this point. You could go ahead and glue down these edges, but in order to make the envelope look a little more polished and resemble that classic envelope shape, you can add this extra step. Fold down the tip of the bottom triangle towards what will be the inside of the envelope. Go ahead and glue this down with a glue stick. Now, when you fold everything back together, you'll see it looks just a little bit neater and a little more polished. The next step is to glue together the bottom and the sides. If you're working with a large glue stick like I am, I found it easier to twist out more of the stick than I usually would, and then use the side to apply the glue more precisely to the edges of the paper. You want to make sure that you apply the glue carefully, otherwise you may end up gluing your envelope together so that you can't put anything in it. Once you've glued everything down, you can fold down the top flap and your envelope is ready for a note or card. The next craft is one I've been wanting to try for a while. I pinned these shoes on Pinterest forever ago, and while these are not decoupage shoes, I wondered just how close I could get using the decoupage method. So I set out for my local Goodwill and found these metallic heels for $7.99. I also swung by my local craft store and picked up some Mod Podge in a matte finish. Then I started cutting out sections of text from the pages of my book. I've got to tell you that it's kind of hard to cut up the pages of a book, at least for me. I'm not sure that I could do this unless it was a book otherwise destined for the trash, like in this situation. While I was cutting out the pages, I kept an eye out for memorable quotes or sections that had interesting formatting, like bold or italics. I set these aside for later. Once I had enough pieces for one shoe, I got down to business gluing the text to the shoe. Using a paintbrush, I applied the Mod Podge to one side of the paper, then stuck the paper to the shoe. Rinse and repeat. Now, before I attempted this craft, I looked at other tutorials and the biggest issue seemed to be the neatness at the edges. No matter how good the rest of the shoe looked, if the edges weren't neat, the shoe looked a little tacky. So I knew I wanted to focus on the edges, but I still wasn't quite sure of the way to achieve that neat finish. In one tutorial, the crafter let the excess paper stick up over the edge and then cut it away with an X-Acto knife. In another, the crafter painstakingly lined up every piece of paper to the edge of the shoe. Which was the better method? In the name of, science, I decided I'd have to try both. The result? I had better luck lining everything up as precisely as I could. Now, this may have been because my X-Acto knife wasn't very sharp, or maybe I didn't let it dry long enough before I carved away the excess. In any case, I think it's worth it to be patient. Yes, it takes longer, but the end result is worth it. And speaking from experience, I found that your fingernail is your best friend. Before applying any glue, I'd use my nail to mark the edges of the shoe on the paper, so that I could cut the shape out exactly. Then once I applied the paper, I'd use my fingernail to tuck in the edge, so that I'd get a clear defined line. Now here's a tip regarding buckling. Because you're applying paper to a three-dimensional surface, you're going to encounter some buckling where the paper doesn't want to lay flat. In some instances, you'll be able to press it down and end up with a small crease, which I didn't mind at all. I definitely didn't have the fortitude to make every piece of paper completely smooth. In fact, I'm not even sure that it's possible. However, when you're dealing with the curvier parts of the shoe, you'll have instances where the buckling is so extreme that you won't be able to press it down. In these cases, use your scissors to create a slit in the middle of the buckle. Once you do this, you've essentially relieved the pressure and you'll be able to press down one side and then the other. Once the entire shoe was covered in text, I went back to those specially formatted pieces that I set aside earlier. I strategically placed some of these around the shoe so that they'd pop out at the viewer. Next, I painted the entire shoe with a coat of Mod Podge to seal everything in and essentially give it a protective coat from wear and tear. I left it to dry overnight and I'm currently considering whether I need to give it additional coats for more protection. I didn't have time to finish the other shoe before publishing this video, but once I do, I will post pictures on Facebook and Instagram, so be sure to follow me if you don't already. I will leave the links in the description box below. The final craft for this video is book page artwork. I'm sure you've seen these beautiful watercolors featured on Pinterest or Etsy, but I wanted to test whether it was achievable for the average crafter with average artistic talent. So here goes. While I was researching, I found several sources that said that I needed to prep the page with gesso before painting. So I picked up some clear gesso from my local craft store on the way home from the gym one day. Boy, is it expensive. I paid $17 for this little 8-ounce bottle. Some sources suggested I needed to attach the page to a stronger material before applying the gesso in order to prevent the page from wrinkling. So I used masking tape to stick one page to some heavy cardstock. Then I painted that sheet with a thin layer of gesso. I found that you really don't need a lot and that a little goes a long way. I also wanted to see what would happen if I left the paper free, so I painted a couple of pages without attaching them to anything. I let the gesso dry overnight. I found that the standalone pages didn't look any worse than the one that was attached to the cardstock, so I would say that that's an unnecessary step. Time to paint. Since I'm doing these tests in the name of the average crafter, I'm just using a simple watercolor palette as well as some watercolor pencils. These are not high quality materials, but were things I already had in my craft drawer. I'm also using a fine liner pen. Once dried, the gesso gives the paper a rough sandpapery texture. The idea is that the paint has something to stick to. However, I wanted to see if this was necessary. It would save a lot of time and money if you didn't need to prep the page with gesso. So I'm also going to paint one of the pages without priming it. Now obviously this is going to vary based on the type of paper used. Different books have different quality paper and different levels of resistance to water, so whatever the outcome of my test, you'll probably have to do testing of your own. My advice would be to try it without gesso first, since it is so expensive, and then only go out and buy it if you need to. Alright, so in my test, both the red and purple flowers were painted on gesso prime pages, and the pink flower was without. In my case, I think I could totally get away without using gesso. The prime paper was a little tougher, while the unprimed paper seemed a little more prone to tearing if you overworked it, but the solution to that is to be more patient, have thinner washes of paint, and wait for each wash to dry. You know, what you're supposed to do anyway when you're using watercolor, and that's not my strong suit. The other thing to note was that the gesso paper really ate up my fine liner. Because of the gritty texture, it basically sanded away the tip to the nub. Other than that, I enjoyed the gesso pages more. It provided reassurance and security. I could be more creative and free-handed with the paint, which I enjoyed. So if you're not worried about costs, spend a little extra and get the gesso. And like I said before, it really does depend on the book that you're using. Well, there you have it. 3 different ways to upcycle an otherwise ruined book. There are of course many creative ways to upcycle the pages of a book. The possibilities are endless. What did you think of these 3 projects? I thought the envelopes were adorable and the watercolor pages are a great way to add personalized artwork to your walls. The decoupage shoe turned out pretty well, but I haven't decided if I'll actually wear them yet. I think I need to finish the other one and then try them on together with an outfit. Overall, I'm very pleased with the results and I still have over half the book left to use on more envelopes, more artwork, or on different crafts. I can't wait to see what other ideas I come up with. If you enjoyed this video, I hope you'll give it a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe. Check out some of my other crafty videos here or watch my bathroom organization video by clicking here. As always, thanks to everybody out there watching and supporting my channel, and cheers for now.